Hi besties, and welcome to our little corner of the internet. I'm Katie.
And I'm Maggie.
And we're your Girlies from McGann, hosting the podcast that takes a deep dive into the prolific and oftentimes unpredictable, unexpected, and offbeat filmography of everyone's favorite doctor, or at least our favorite, Paul McGann. Hi, Maggie.
Hi.
I guess, as you can tell by the title of this episode, surprise! Surprise! Yeah, I mean, just so y'all know, we've probably been keeping a secret from you guys for quite some time, and it's been very difficult to keep that secret for quite some time. Maggie, do you want to talk to the people about how this came about and what happened?
Yeah, I think based on when we're putting this out, this will have been a secret for what, 3 months and change, which is a long time to keep such a big secret. But so we never started this show with like the goal of ultimately doing what we're gonna do here. It was always a pipe dream. It was never something that we were like, okay, well, this is the end. We want this to be the end result. But I made the ill-advised financial decision to go to Chicago TARDIS, and we both thought, fuck it. Why not just, put all our cards on the table and see if we can get him on, even just to say that we tried. Like, so we decided, fuck it, we ball, let's go for it. And we wrote out a whole letter, we made a whole kind of plan. This took months, by the way. We had been thinking about doing this probably since like August, September of last year. So this has been in the works for a long fucking time. We wrote out the letter. Katie made him a gorgeous painting. We made him a friendship bracelet. We had this whole spiel ready to go, and I set it down on the table in front of him at Chicago TARDIS, and the lovely Ken Deep, who, God, I still owe you so many drinks, man, it basically introduced the concept of this show to Paul, and before I could even open my damn mouth, the man was like, oh, would you want me to come on? And I was like, yeah, that was kind of the point of everything sitting in front of you. So thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Kenny. Like, that was so kind, and like it just was such a shock. And like, yes, we had been planning, and yes, it was a pipe dream and it was a hope, but you never know when you're walking into these things how they're gonna react to it. And it is kind of an odd concept as a whole, but like the fact that he was so open and so lovely and so like willing and all that, like we and the fact that we were able to get him as quickly as we got him is just so wonderful. Yeah. And he was so kind and so sweet, and it couldn't have been any easier and any better than what we could have imagined. And we're so excited to present this to you guys. Like, it's just, and also going back to the painting that I made, if you go back on my Instagram account, you will find it. I sneakily just posted on that because I post my art all the time. I'm like, no one will know. And so it's definitely there on my Instagram account, and it was fun to kind of like post little hints. I feel like, the Russell T Davies when he was talking about the Who spy, so like, we've been subtly dropping hints on accident. But
if you've seen my Letterboxd recently, you'll also see a different hint that will be revealed either in this part or in the next part, what some of my recent Letterboxd logs mean. We cannot believe this happened this fast. Like, we thought, okay, we'll pitch him this idea in end of November, early December, and if it works, it'll take a couple months for him to even get back to us. But no, we've been sitting on this recording since January, so December 1st to like January whatever the day was that we recorded it, that was the space of time it took us to get this set up. So just from two very tired industry people, thank you, Paul McGann, for being very prompt about about getting back to us on this.
Immaculate email etiquette. Like, it just was beautiful. Yeah, thank you so much. Real. So much. I think we expound a little bit on writing in that as well. So it's super fun. This was just a huge blessing, and we're so excited to present it to you guys. We are going to do it in parts because as you'll see later on, we spent quite a bit of time with him, which again was something that we were not expecting at all. And so we're pleased to present part one of the Girlies from McGann interviewing Paul McGann. Enjoy.
This is the first time I've ever, or maybe ever will, talk to a podcast with my family's name on it, or at least attached to it. That's unusual.
Apologies for the probably copyright infringement, but we do it with love. We do it with
More the
love.
merrier, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that Maggie kind of like told you when you both met in Chicago TARDIS, but I'll
Mm.
extend the sentiment too. You know, thank you so much for being so free with your time. We really truly appreciate it. And she had mentioned too that this your work has been kind of a foundational pillar for our friendship. For the years that we have been friends, like we've almost been what, almost 10 years, Maggie, at this
Almost 10
point.
years, yeah.
Yeah. So just something that has this podcast coming together as kind of like a loving whim, is so exciting for us because having you on is just it's really, really special. So thank you so much for being here and being willing and supportive and, and totally cool with it.
Well, honestly, it's an honor. Um,
Yeah.
it's unusual,
Yeah.
but I'm but I'm kind of no. Honestly, I feel slightly honored.
Yeah.
It's lovely.
Well,
And when Maggie
yeah.
and yeah, when we met in Chicago, I was well, it's probably no surprise. I'd not heard of it. I knew nothing
Mhm.
about it. Um, and I've not listened to it, so which may or may not surprise you. But
It's
nor do I
fine.
Google myself and
Yeah,
things like
no,
that.
it's fair.
Like why
That's fair.
would you?
Never read the comments.
You know that
No,
that
never read
where
the
the
comments.
madness lies.
That is
So
the first rule of the internet. Never read the comments.
no, it's kind of lovely to think. It's you probably know more. You may know more about my work than I do, or at least I've probably forgotten lots of the things I've done, and
Mhm.
reminds me actually of a friend of mine a few years back wrote this biography of David Bowie, and when it was out a few months later, Bowie rang him. He'd never met Bowie. He got it together from files and the like, and different resources. But Bowie called him to thank him, particularly for filling in this 18-month gap in the early
Yeah.
70s. That through one thing and another, he had complete amnesia about, um, which made me laugh. Thanks, man.
I
Oh, that's where I was. Thanks,
I
Nick.
can't I can't imagine that, and that's actually the perfect segue because that was literally our first like little softball question for you. We wanted to know, as I know,
Before they get harder.
I yeah. Well, at least for us. We are huge Bowie fans, so like thank you for bringing him up because we are huge Bowie fans. Maggie was a Bowie fan her entire life. I was late to the game. I didn't start loving him until probably like my late 20s, early 30s. And so my thing is every time I find a fellow Bowie fan, I have to know what is your favorite Bowie song?
Thing is, you see, Katie, I'm of an age. Our, my gang, our lot, were the 12, 13, for the rising teens
Hmm.
when Bowie appeared on Top of the Pops in Britain
Hmm.
and sang Starman. That's
Hmm.
considered now it's become a thing. It's become a sort of touchstone. This is this
Yeah.
appearance, the way he was dressed. Ronson had just been included in the group. This was going to be, the Spiders and Mars were together. Um, and this thing was, and suddenly like all these kids and everybody watched it. Of course, it was back in the day when there were just two or three TV channels. Everybody watched everything. So even your parents would be in the room at Top of the Pops was on, which is this once a week Thursday evening hit show on the TV. It was the only one. And there's Bowie singing Starman, and things were never the same. And it's right. It's a little bit like when people talk about that Velvet Underground record from '67.
Hmm.
Although it may have only sold 10,000 copies, but everybody that bought one started a band. In a sense
Yeah.
that I think that now, anyway, it's the way people speak of it. It's like every kid, rising teen that watched it 5, 6, 7 years later would be in a group, most of the kids of my generation that you speak to are in groups. That was the reason. It was Bowie. Anyway, no, that's a long-winded answer to your question. Starman's a good shout, but that
Yeah.
um, if I tell you recently, last year I was doing I went to do I was in the middle of London in Soho doing a job. It must have been a voiceover. I went down into this basement facility in what used to be the old Trident Studios. That was the
Oh
famous
yeah,
60s
yeah.
studio.
I've been there. Yeah.
Right, you can say, often you get tourists outside taking pictures and anyway, but it's still a working studio. And I went down there, and of course that's the studio. That's the studio where a lot of the Spiders from Mars stuff was
Magic.
recorded. I couldn't help myself, and when I was on my own in the corridor, I just yelled, "I'm an alligator!" And this lugubrious engineer from the next room said, "Everybody does that." That's all he
Who
said.
wouldn't
I
though?
said, I said, "Oh, really?" He
Yeah.
says, "Yeah, everyone that comes in here does that." So anyway, so the kind of 50 odd years later, it's still there, it's still alive, it's still in the air. But Bowie was for us. Bowie was everything. But even my son, when he my son still contends. I got kids who are in the two lads in their 30s, and Joe is a musician,
Hmm.
and he's only half joking. He says the world's gone to cock since Bowie died. It was Bowie's death
Hmm.
really that
Mm.
sent the
Hmm.
world spinning. And I know he's only half joking. I think he kind of half believes it.
I think it
You
all
know.
kind of went to pot at that point. That was the year that it all kind of
Oh yeah,
tilted a little.
yeah. The world just tilted. You're exactly right. Yeah, that's how it
Yeah.
feels. Bowie, of course, was also an actor. He was a really, really
Mhm.
accomplished actor.
He
I
really
think the thing
was.
I like most about. I mean, I could go on about. We could do a separate 2 hours about Bowie, but I'm kind of
Happily.
I'm kind of touched as well by this idea that in the 60s, when he was still a teenager himself and desperate to make it, there's that period between 65 or 66 and, before somebody mentions Mick Ronson's name. So you get that 5 year period and he tries everything. This group,
Hmm.
that group, these songs, sort of Tim Alley things, joke songs, folk songs, different guises, different costumes. And he's known around, and he's a London boy, so he's known around London as Davy Jones, who just keeps trying but can't seem to catch a break. And I kind of love that. He really, 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 really wanted it. He really, really tried. He knew Mark Bolan, of course, and Bolan. I think Bolan probably cracked it before Bowie did. And then of course they kind of carried the glam thing together. But I don't know. There's something about the performer, and as another performer, I sort of get it. That he wasn't
Yeah.
going to be stopped.
Yeah.
He wanted it. He wanted it so badly he would have done anything. And then of course Ronson, who of course is another big hero, Mick Ronson, without whom, dot dot dot. And there's that. It is like, but it's that episode in '71 where somebody he didn't know Mick Ronson, and Ronson was living up north in Hull,
Mhm.
but people knew him. He was a great player. And somebody mentioned to Bowie, look, and Bowie was about to just jack it in. He'd had enough. He couldn't, although he'd had this little deal, he'd had this kind of half hit here and there. So anyway, so the mythology goes, he was going to stop. And then somebody said, no, 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 before you do, just try and get in touch with this kid in Hull, this guitar player. And you know, within weeks it took off.
I love the story of it because like Maggie and I both are also really huge Queen fans and like kind of learning about the band as a whole, like on paper, none of
Yeah,
those men should have worked. Like it's just like all of
that's
their
right.
backgrounds and stuff like that were just completely like, John Deacon was like what was it, a electronics major? Like he was
Yeah.
going in that direction.
That's
Like
right.
astrophysicist for Brian May, like, Freddie was
Yeah,
a
May should have
graphic
gone into
designer.
academia, shouldn't he? He was at Imperial. He was going to do physics.
Yeah.
That's what
Hmm.
he should have probably done with his life. Um, yeah, it's a great story. It's a great story
Yeah.
from a time when a time of course is long gone. These things don't happen anymore. I mean, there's just bands just don't get together the way they did and don't have this kind of
No.
relevance. I think that's another thing. Again, without sounding like some old fogey, which I may be becoming, but I'm definitely not there yet. But it was in those when we were kids and in that at that time, um, there was still the sense that it was important, or rather, there was a kind of romantic importance to it. Music meant something, or at least, we kind of harbored the rather fanciful notion that it could change the world. Still, we still had the
Mhm.
last knockings of that, um,
Yeah.
and it felt great, it felt. And it was important to us, and you sort of going to school. There was still that era. You go into school, and you'd sort of make your attachments, so you'd form your friendships along musical lines, or at least who liked what you liked, and it was important.
Mhm. It
And
didn't
you could
it
see why
doesn't feel
people
so
wanted to.
commercialized.
Well, yeah, well, it was, but it
Yeah.
was in the hands of, I suppose the power was different. It was in the hands of these companies. And Bowie's a good example. Bowie's a genius, but why should he
Mhm.
knock on the door for 6, 7 years and nobody give him a break, really?
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
who were these people? Who were these Philistines? Anyway.
Can you imagine though, like saying no and having known that you said no to David Bowie like further down the line? Like, and I
Yeah, but
think
those
that's
stories are
like another thing that
legion,
we,
aren't they? Yeah, people that turned down the
I know.
Beatles, people that turned down the Stones. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Some A&R people, someone, yeah, I mean, there's a million of those tales, um,
Hmm.
and they're salutary. Yeah, Bowie, bless his memory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But were there any I know you weren't sort of as drawn towards maybe the arts growing up. You were sportier growing up, but in terms of like artists that you grew up with, like Bowie, like the Beatles, were there any that sort of had a bigger influence on you kind of when you did get into performing that you kind of realized later on like, oh yeah, I was drawing from this thing that I was watching growing up kind of unintentionally almost.
Well, we grew up in me and my brothers. I come from four. There's four boys and a girl, siblings, and we grew up in the city of Liverpool. Liverpool's not exactly a cultural backwater. It wasn't then, um, isn't now. So I suppose that it wasn't out of this world to think that even growing up in these working class communities that we grew up in, that you might get a shot at or get a chance to be in the arts or do something, to do with the arts. Um, it seemed in those days, it seemed more, the chances probably were more in music. I had a cousin. He died earlier. Well, he died a few months ago. Richie, he's 10 years older than me, and he from Liverpool, and he was in a Merseybeat group in the '60s. He was a teenager, so and they had a number two record, and they went on top of the pops, and he toured the world, and he played all his life. So even in the family, there was, we could see that if you wanted to go into music, Liverpool wasn't a bad place to be. Theatre was different. And although my three brothers are all actors, like I am, it wasn't something I don't think it was something that we thought about. Then it was more, like I said, I was into sport anyway, but music seemed to be the thing. You could always, you know, join a group. In fact, when we first, that is me and Joe, Mark, and Stephen, when we all first worked together, we became actors all around the same time. And quickly, and for the only time, we worked together on stage in a musical. So, and that seemed to, and it went well. And I think that was around the time one of the record companies said, "Well, yeah, let's make a little single," and we did that. So we were doing musical things, and Stephen was 18. I think I was 20, 21. And it seemed, well, not inevitable, but it seemed to be something that was, you could just do it. Still, you could, that seemed, it was on offer, we could. But as far as acting goes, we didn't know any actors. Um, and so probably if he'd said to us then, well, you're all going to become actors, we'd have laughed. Um, but we did. We did. And we kind of did, and in different ways, we sort of fell into it. Anyway, your question was there any,
Like other than Bowie,
was
were
there
there
any sort
other
of,
musical
I don't know
artists, maybe actors? Yeah.
I remember watching actors when I was at home still, as a teenager, watching actors on TV. and wondering about it. I remember sitting watching John Hurt. There was a thing called I, Claudius, and this Robert Graves adaptation, a big deal in the 70s. And lots of great actors in it. There's Hurt playing the Mad Emperor, and I'm sat with my dad watching it. Like I say, everybody watched everything. And I must have asked him, I said, I asked my dad, is that a job? Is he getting paid for that? And my dad said, well, I don't suppose he's doing it for nothing. And I think that might be the first time that I even, maybe I was 15, 16, and I thought of it. I thought, well, there's a job. Things we also, well, we never went to the theatre. When eventually I got to train, I went to a stage school in London. And there were other kids like me and kids from different classes. I only mention that because, some kids' parents would have taken them to the theatre habitually. We never went to the theatre. Our mum and dad just didn't do it. We never went to the theatre, so that wasn't the way in. And I remember being in this common room in RADA. I went to RADA, the Royal Academy in London, and remember one rainy day, and we're sat in the common room. And there's Ken Branagh, all the people I was there. We were kids together, um, talking about things, and it transpired over the course of this conversation that, particularly us working class kids, none of us had ever been to theatre. And yet here we were in a stage school training to be theatre actors. So the question was, well, how did you get into acting? And it was generally, of course, it was through movies, and, we'd seen actors in films and on TV. That was it. Oh, I like that. I think, this is, I like that actor. I don't like that actor. Whereas, there were other kids who'd been to the theatre stacks of times with their parents, or even the opera, depending on your sort of background.
Yeah.
In our case, yeah, we kind of fell into it a little bit. It was, a series of kind of happy accidents, and we all became actors, um, and have been ever since.
Did RADA end up giving you guys opportunities to explore the arts in that way too? Like you were mentioning that like a lot of the more upper class families were able to were taking them regularly, but like as students, were you able to kind of watch and get to see things that you
Well,
weren't
well, I
privy
think
to
in
before?
my own experience, well, yeah, being in London,
Hmm.
um, at that time, I went to RADA, which was 2 years. It was a stage, it was a stage school. We didn't do. There was no tech then. There was no kind of lightweight cameras or anything. So
Yeah.
it was all stage. You just did shows. And while I was there, we were encouraged to go and see shows, go and see what
Yeah.
shows are, how actors do it. It was a kind of crash course in that respect. And kind of nice as well, practical. None of my brothers trained. I was the only one that auditioned for a school and went to a school. The brothers didn't do that. They just became actors. Um, so I sort of got the experience of it. Uh, the the train. I was a very British, or at least from that period, a really the British system, at least as it was then, was stage based. That's what you did. It
Hmm.
just made you learn how to walk and talk properly and recite Shakespeare, that kind of thing. Now it's different. I'm still associated with the school 40 odd years later. There's a
Yeah.
mentoring scheme and there's other kinds of things that go on at RADA. And now when I see the shows and when I, talk to students, and sometimes, like I say, sometimes I mentor one of the students there. I'm slightly envious for the things that they have. Particularly, they've got they make films now. They've got different sound
Hmm.
studios, and they got gear that we just simply didn't have. It's a different era. Um,
Yeah.
but then the demands are different. They're training for different things. It's they tend to now train for um, theatre. It ain't so open these days for actors coming out of schools. It's mostly um, TV and film. I mean, nowhere stays the same. Um, and like I say, going back to that rainy afternoon in that common room, we all wanted to be movie stars. I laugh
Hmm.
about it now. We laughed at it then. The idea, fancy. What's the chances of becoming a movie star? Imagine being in somebody's movie. And I can remember that feeling. And even when when you got out, when we got out, and then should you be lucky enough even to start work, to get a gig, to start off, to get into the union, it was different
Yeah.
then. The union was a
It's
closed shop, so most of those kids who I was there at RADA with, even my term and different terms that were also there, um, half of them I never saw again. They never got a start. Such was the way of working in those days. And then when we
it's
did get a start, you went and you did your thing, and you got a kind of provisional license. It's mad now. It sounds like 300 years ago, but the closed shop was such then that, and this is the British equity. It would later be busted, in the second or third Thatcher government. They stopped it, but
mm,
with all the closed shop unions. But I left in 81, so, and it was still running and the closed shop thing was still happening. So it meant that somebody had to give you a union card who had one. So in my
mm,
case, and that's why these schools held showcases, that you'd be there for a couple of years. And the big deal was right at the end where you do a showcase and casting people are there, people who run theatres are there. And the hope is that somebody there sees you, offers you a job, and has a union card to give you. Otherwise, you can't do it. So anyway, that's what happened, and I was out. Suddenly, I was out. I was working, and then you put these sort of provisional weeks on this card, and then you're up and running. And then, and I've been up and running ever since, thankfully. Um, but I remember the feeling
mm,
when I was first working, and I suppose whenever I felt very ambitious, it seemed kind of mad to be so ambitious, because in a sense, it's one of those things, one of those careers that comes at you and then sort of builds behind you, and you just got to wait for things to happen. Um, but I did think, what if somebody ever put me in a movie, I'd be happy. That was the only sort of ambition that, because it seemed so far-fetched. Um,
mhm.
and then 5, 6 years later, it happened. So I was happy.
You wanna go, Maggie? You got
Yeah,
your
we've got quite the laundry list of questions, so we're kind of
yeah.
figuring out how to ask
Go
them.
on,
But
fire away.
but in terms of, training at RADA and training primarily for theater, did that kind of result in you not having a bias towards theater, but sort of is there a medium you're more comfortable in, or is it more just about, feeling confident and being able to do the story justice, or do you have a medium that you prefer?
I think there's a reason why. I mean, actors of most stripes and different ages often will answer this in the same way. They'll often say theatre because um, there's a practical reason why the answer is theatre, because theatre gives you the basis, teaches you the skills. Literally, that's where you learn your chops. And also, you can work in theatre, learn theatre, train in theatre. Um, and then on a TV or a film set, you can put those skills to good use. It doesn't work the other way around. There's nothing you can pick up, learn on a movie set, on a film set in that situation that will prepare you even for 5 minutes to work on stage. It just doesn't work the other way around. That's the reason. So why most actors, most working actors, people who've been doing it for any length of time will say to you, yeah, it's got to be theatre, because and even over years where, you might be lucky to work in all kinds of mediums, you might be, like I am,
Mhm.
to go back to theatre, which I love to do at least once a year, kind of, it's a shot in the arm. It gets you, it just hones you again, And that sounds, whatever that sounds like, sounds slightly pretentious, but anyway, that's practically how it works, physically how it works. You get sort of theatre fit. That's an expression actors use here. That's what it's more akin to sport in that way. You feel more just honed up, tuned in. You're better for it. theatre's the thing. Yeah.
I I think it's probably, and I don't presume to know because I am not an actor, but I would have presumed to think that being on stage gives you that straight, direct feedback that from an audience, as opposed to like you're in TV, you're in movies or
Mhm.
whatever, and you're only reading what you're seeing from critics or online or whatever. I'm sure that like you just like you mentioned, it allows you to kind of jumpstart, okay, this is working better for me this way
Yeah.
because this is how the audience is reacting directly, as opposed to it just being,
Yeah.
all
It's
right, I just
live.
did my 5 minute bit in, in a movie or
Yeah.
something like that, and
Yeah. Why
it
would you not?
doesn't
Why
play.
would you not want to do it live? Right? Live is sometimes it's slightly terrifying, of
Yeah,
course,
I believe it.
and
I believe
exposing.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but like you just say, you might do 8 shows a week. I was in a theatre show recently. You do 8 shows a week. Every audience is different. Every performance is different. Why?
Yeah.
Because the audience is part of it. It
Hmm.
is live. And you're kind of in it together. I love theatre. Like I say, um, it can be exposing, and sometimes it can go
Hmm.
wrong. But so
Yeah.
what can't? Mind you, I've also had fantastic times on film sets. It depends what it is. I suppose it depends.
Yeah.
You get lucky. It's nearly always the people. I suppose this goes for everybody's walk of life. In the end, it
Hmm.
comes down to the people you're with, people you're collaborating with, the colleagues you have, the time you have.
Absolutely.
You gotta have a good time. You gotta have a good time doing
Hmm.
these things. Otherwise, what are you
Yeah.
doing it for? And it's
Well,
so
and you're
then when
spending
we
so long.
well, yeah, it's a commitment. But even
Yeah.
when Maggie and I met recently at Chicago Televis, it's just, in a way it's the same feeling there. Even these fan shows and these conventions and
Mhm.
these events, for us, that is, for the guests that are there and people appearing, it's the same thing. You want to have a good time.
Yeah.
We met at
Why
Chicago
do it?
Times. I mean, and that's exactly right. Otherwise, why do it? Life's too
Hmm.
short. And that was a good one, wasn't it, Maggie?
Yeah.
The
Yeah, that
atmosphere
was
there, the
fabulous.
spirit was good there. I enjoy that one. They're
Yeah,
good
that one.
get-togethers, aren't they?
They are, yeah. And you, when you were there, you mentioned something on one of the panels that I thought was really interesting, and it's something I don't really hear from actors. I interview people, pretty regularly for my day job, but you kind of said something about the idea that like as a working actor, you're maybe one of 100 guys that look, sound, act similar, and really sometimes or oftentimes getting the gig is kind of dependent on being the person that's available. So
Yeah.
does that kind of affect your relationship with being an actor? Because I mean, to me, it would seem like starting out that would be pretty disheartening. So like, is that something you get used to? Like, what is your sort of relationship with
Heartening.
with?
Well, it's interesting you should say disheartening, when in fact the opposite is true. Maybe the point I was attempting to make was that when the penny drops, when you realize, and when you're a young actor, that you can stop worrying about that kind of thing. Almost the arbitrary nature of the profession. This stuff goes on without you, and if you're going to, like I was describing, that one of the first things you learn is that you're on a bunch of lists for casting purposes and otherwise. I suppose it's a half joke in the sense that imagine somebody that's well, even imagine some kid, highly talented, gone to a great drama school, da, 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 now is out working. For years has been told that they're special, the best actor at their school, the best actor at their drama school, won all the prizes. And now you're out in the profession and now you're just on a bunch of lists. It's just, I
Hmm.
mean, people your age. Of course, it's perfectly natural. People your age, people sort of your height, people your coloring, da, 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 and you're about to meet them. You're going to meet them soon enough because your
Hmm.
agent's going to make sure you meet them because you're going to be sent for all kinds of castings and the like. And you're going to meet your rivals within the first few weeks. It's kind of funny. but it's what but it dispels this any notions you may have had, or it cures you probably of any, you know, notions you may have had about, I don't know, not being special, but that sounds kind of cruel, but um, in a way, it frees you up because you don't need to worry about this kind of thing. You only need to worry about the things that you can affect, the things you can, that you can control. Um, but that's the nature of it. And so, again, you need to be a working actor for this to happen to. But um, that rival of yours, in my case, I probably let's pick one out of the hat. Ian Glenn, Ian Glenn. He won't mind me talking about him. He probably talks about me. But but way back it was always me and Ian. I'd see Ian, at the Ian, he's on Game of Thrones and Ian, other stuff. Um, he'd become an art of a thing I was just about to go into, or vice versa, and for a while, if I didn't get something, it's because he got it. And if and and if he wasn't available, I'd get it. And that's how the thing works. That's how it works. There's nothing I don't know, there's nothing spooky or special about it. That's just how it works. And in a way, so you see my point. You can then you think even as a young kid, you just look at it and go, well, that's okay, well, that's all right. There's no need to fret about that then. Or talk about the universe owing you it. That's not how it works. It
It's an
works like any
interesting.
profession. It's like who's around, who's available. Be
Yeah,
available. That's the first thing. Be available.
it's an interesting take because you don't, like Maggie said, like you don't really hear people say it like that. In LA, I mean, we're full of, you know, trying to be actors, working actors, not working actors, and there is
Yeah.
this level, this air of like you just said, special. Why aren't they picking me? So it's nice to hear that, like, okay, it does take the pressure off as long as you're getting the work. I mean, I guess that's all that matters,
Yeah,
like
well, I
as
suppose,
long
but
as you're
then
getting the callback.
well, that's also true. I mean, we all have temperaments and we all have feelings, of course.
For sure.
And actors almost,
For sure.
stereotypically are associated with just being, milk toasts or something, or just
Emotional.
emotional. But
Yeah.
when in fact,
How
in
could you not?
in their defense, I think probably most working actors are tougher than you think. You got to be.
Yeah,
And like I said,
you
that's
have
the
to.
reality. I
Yeah.
remember again probably around the same time I watched John Hurt in I Claudius. So I remember watching a chat show in England, um, a guy called Parkinson, and Dustin Hoffman was on, and Hoffman's
Mhm.
chatting away, and one of Parkinson's questions, he says to him, so when you first get a script, what's the first thing you do? And Hoffman shot back without even pausing for breath. He said, "I check for Robert De Niro's fingerprints."
I
Anyway, so
mean,
the idea being
it's
that
true.
it doesn't matter what level you're at, even these like super level, these are great actors, superstar actors. They're still on a list. They're still on a
Hmm.
little list with three or four other people. It's the way it is.
Hmm.
Um, that's the way it's going to be. Just
It's a fickle industry. It's a very
don't
fickle
worry about it.
industry. Yeah.
Yeah, but also I suppose taken as well to the logical or nth degree, it's something that I don't know. Well, I keep saying you don't need to worry about it. It's not about you. It's never been about you. And when the good things happen, I'm lucky. I've worked a lot. I've worked decades, and some lovely things have happened. Not because I'm king of the world any more than when the crap happened. I was the worst actor.
Mhm.
It's not. It's not about. That's not what it's about. Um, it never has been. So you can let yourself off the hook. I think. Anyway, most actors do. They just don't tell you they're doing that because nobody ever asks them.
Yeah. I mean, that's the fun part for me about talking to actors is getting in the nitty-gritty of the work, especially someone like you, someone who has been a working actor for, 40 years, however long, and
Mm,
especially in terms of like making this show, looking at kind of the span of different things that you can do and be a part of when, you are, when you've worked that long and when things just come your way. For me, that's the interesting part, especially as a film critic who's kind of watching stuff near constantly. It's fun to kind of zero in on maybe
Well,
one
yeah,
person and
yeah,
look at
yeah.
it and go, oh yeah, this is, tracking their careers is quite fun. And it's been quite fun here, the different span of things that you've done, maybe because you're the person that's available or, what have you.
Head right. I like actors. I've always liked actors. Um, I like their resourcefulness. I like their stubbornness sometimes, their dedication. Um, One of our sons years ago said, well, he told me and his mom, he wants to be an actor. But nevertheless, we felt duty bound to try to stop him. Um, which is what you should do. You should, if a kid says they want to be an actor, you should try and dissuade them for the simple reason that, well, really only the people that can't be stopped should be doing it. If you can be stopped, if you can be dissuaded, if you can be persuaded to do something else, then go and do that thing because it's too hard otherwise.
Yeah.
Anyway, he never worked with Sonny. He's doing it. He's still an actor, but no, I like actors. I would say that because I am one, but no, but I've always enjoyed their company. They're good people.
Mm.
They're good workers. They're, you know, they've got to be. They've got to be. They can take a lot. They can suffer a lot, still deliver. Actors deserve a bit of respect. He says.
No, it's very true. I mean, like was it last year or the year before? I mean, going through all the writers and SAG strikes, out here, it was
Yes.
because of all the AI stuff. Like, it's important that people are, like you just said, putting respect on the job. It's hard work, and it's unforgiving and
And it
tough.
is
And so,
work.
like,
It is
it
work.
it
It's
is. It
work,
is.
and the work, of course, the work, and most of the work, the prep, the preparatory work, and the
Hmm.
you don't see. A couple of weeks ago here, I wanted to see that we got a lovely cinema at the end of the street here, and a proper big system. And I wanted to see that Pope film. What's it called? Conclave. Anyway, it was on too late. It was on nine
Mm.
at night, and I just didn't want to. So it's the middle of the afternoon, and the only thing that was on at 4 o'clock in the afternoon was Wicked. And I went to see it. And I didn't know anything about it. It wasn't for me.
Mhm.
Listen, I love music, as you can tell. I love theatre,
Mhm.
as you can tell. Musical theatre, that ain't my thing. I've never been, it's never been my thing. And so consequently, I didn't know anything about this thing. I thought, oh, shall I go? And I went on my own. I sat there and I was flabbergasted. I loved it.
Oh,
I
really?
just and I banged on about it for 3 days afterwards to anyone that would listen. And anyway, why am I saying this? Why? Because what's staggering are the two women, the two leads,
Hmm.
Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande, are fantastic in it. And listen, believe me, as another actor, you're looking at the. I mean, they're doing things which they have no right to do, to that degree, and they sort of three or four things at once. They're brilliant, brilliant, brilliant.
Hmm.
And so yeah, later actor friends are going, well, yeah, you took your time, didn't you? We've always loved it, blah blah blah. And anyway, one was telling me how when these two women were cast sort of whatever 9 months, 10 months out, they didn't know one another. And Ariana Grande
Hmm.
apparently called Cynthia Erivo and said, right, we're going to meet and we're going to prepare and we're going to work and we're going to do that. And they became friends and they trained and then what you see is that you see this brilliance and they make it look effortless. Of course, it isn't. They're both
Hmm.
fantastic. But that's why I like actors. That's probably a good and recent example. Actors will do this, they'll deliver the good actors and they make it look easy and it ain't. Not at that level. Anyway, have you seen Wicked? Go and
Do
see
you?
it.
I
Highly
haven't I
Yeah,
actually
recommend.
not
haven't seen it
yet.
yet, which is funny because I
Maggie,
I
Yeah,
went to
see
see
no.
it.
I went to see
Are
the
you into are
stage
you into musical
show.
theatre?
Yeah,
Right, so
I
you
did
knew it.
theater for
I didn't
years
even know
when I
what it
was a
was about.
kid.
I didn't
Yeah.
even, yeah. Well, there you go. So it's for you.
Yeah, I had
No,
seen the stage show when I was like, I think 13 or 14. So
mm.
the fact that I have not gotten to go and actually see it yet feels like a crime.
See it in the, see it on a big screen. Don't wait for it to come
Yeah. Yeah. I
onto a
feel like there's also
stream.
a big appeal to like going to the cinema by yourself because I did that a lot in college. Like there was a cinema that I could just walk
Yeah,
to
I
from
love
my
that.
dorm. I feel like there's just an appeal and people, make fun of you and go like, "Why are you going to the movies by yourself?" But I'm like, there's something great about just sitting in a dark room with a giant screen in front of you and like you said, watching people put in the work
Yeah,
and being just completely blown away by that. Even as a film critic now, as cynical as I tend to get about film because I watch so much of it, just going by yourself, like maybe two or three other people in the theater, and just watching something blow your mind. Like there's no experience quite like that, especially
I
when you
agree.
do start to consider the people that are actually involved in bringing this thing to a screen
Yes,
that big.
yeah. And sometimes you can go at 10 in the morning. They have
Yeah.
10, they have morning screenings. Sometimes that
I
just,
love
it
a morning
sounds odd.
screening.
Yeah, but it feels great. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. Those are the flicks on your own. And then you see everybody else that's doing the same thing. You see all the other sort of
Hmm.
lonely onlys.
Yeah.
Anyway, highly recommended. Go and see it. Tell them I sent you.
Do you feel do you feel like you are able to, are like going back to like how you're talking about the preparation between Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo? Like, do you feel like the projects that you've worked on, you've had the opportunity to kind of have that prep lead time, or is it like, are there instances where it's like there's one weekend where they call you and say, "Hey, we need you in by Monday," or is it, and you kind of have to
Sadly,
go, or
yeah.
is it?
At my level, I'm not at the Ariana Grande level, plainly. I think the most prep I ever had or was about 2 weeks. Yeah, that's
Jeez.
it. Yeah, yeah. It's just one of those things. One of the vicissitudes. That sounds good in Scouse, doesn't it? Vicissitudes. Um, the vicissitudes is that you. I mean, here anyway. You just casting seems to be the thing they do at you know 58 minutes past 11. That's what they do. The
Mhm.
casting's always the last thing. And maybe it harks back to what we were half laughing about before. Just be around. It's whoever's available. Um,
Yeah.
the times down the years, I've got a call to do something, and it's like, well, when do you want us? Next Monday. We're starting next week. That's just how it is. Which sounds remarkable, but it's just true. Whoever's
Yeah.
around, as if actors are, I don't know, 10 a penny or something. There you go.
Yeah.
No, but in
My
answer to your
type A
question, no, very,
personality.
yeah, yeah.
My type A personality couldn't handle it. I have to have time to prepare.
Listen, my type X person or whatever I am, they can't handle it either. You just kind of get used to it. You just turn up.
Yeah.
You try and
Mhm.
cram the lines. You just,
Yeah.
anyway, it's how it is. I'm sure, the higher up the food chain you are, the big stars, of course, they get plenty of time. I don't think, honestly, I mean, joking apart, in all the years I've worked, I don't know even that I've known even more than 3 months, 4 months in advance what I'll be doing. Ever. No idea. Couldn't tell you what's next.
I guess it keeps you on your toes. It's
Keeps
exciting
you on
that
your
you never know
toes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
what you're doing it. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that's part of the life. Um,
Keeps you slim. Yeah, with
stressed
anxiety.
out.
Yeah, it keeps you completely stressed out.
I
No, and
know.
somehow, we've all just done it, raised families on it, stayed put,
Yeah.
just working. Um, it's lovely, I've talked to, you know, star actors who say, "Oh yeah, I'm doing this next year, and then we're going to go on." Great. I've never ever known that.
Yeah.
So I'm just used to it.
I mean,
It could
I
all
definitely
change
think it
tomorrow.
worked. Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely worked out for you the best for the better because like Maggie and I have like a spreadsheet that lists out your filmography that we go through to pick
Yeah.
out what our next episode's going to be. And so it's a very long list, Paul. And we really appreciate it.
I went
There's
in.
some really amazing stuff in
What
there.
did I do? Some of these I did Holby City in
Mhm.
on the TV here, and that was a year. So that's the one exception. That was the only time
Yeah.
I knew, where I was going to be. That felt like a straight job.
Mhm.
Straight job. What I mean is, it felt like not like an acting job, felt like a real job.
Yeah.
Going to the
Yeah.
same place
Yeah.
every morning and clocking in, and that was like a real job. But
Payroll.
that was the only,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. But that was, yeah, really the only time that I've known even, 3, 4 months ahead. Yeah, it's just the
Well,
way things are.
it's funny that you bring up Holby City is that when I introduced Maggie to your work, because I was the fan before she was the fan, and that was one of the first pieces because it was right at the time
Mhm.
that you were in, and we
No
were
way.
catching it on BritBox. Yeah, so we were watching it on BritBox. So it was
What
quite
was
the
I playing? I
plot.
was playing yet another functioning
You were a villain.
psychopath villain.
Yeah,
I
but
played
those
lots
are
of
fun.
villains. I played lots of villains. There was a time when, um, certainly when I was a young actor, I'd get these, I don't know, yeah, plausible baddies, or like the kind of character. If there was a character in it, oh, he can't be the killer. He's too nice. Yeah, Paul will do
Surprise.
it. Give it to Paul. And I'd have sort of rash of
Well, you have the
these.
presence.
Yeah, he's too sweet. Oh no! And then it turns out, literally the last frame, you see that it's him. He did it, kind of thing. Yeah, you gotta laugh.
I mean, I've told Katie this on episodes before. I mean, that's always my favorite. I always love watching people kind of get to like who kind of it's like, oh, they're too nice to do this. I love watching them sort of push their limits and be a baddie. Maybe that says something about me personally, but like that's always my favorite thing when that comes up on the show. When it turns out that you're playing the villain, it always feels a little bit more fun for me.
Yeah, and me, believe me.
Mhm.
But the thing is, I suppose in those instances, you can story-wise, it's something you can eke out. Whether it's over a mini series or over a bunch of episodes. It's like a will they, won't they, will he, won't he, is whatever. It's just something simple for TV or film. You can make it last. You can elongate it. Um, who wants to know straight off the bat who's the killer? Not me.
So in kind of that same line, like I think about so one of the more recent episodes that we covered, we did Nicetown and we
Oh, I
were
loved that.
a
It was unusual,
I'm
wasn't
very
it? That was an
curious. It was extremely unusual. We had a little bit of a hard time with that one, not gonna lie. But
oh,
we were kind of curious
in
about like
respect of
how the
what?
reception I think it was more of just the subject matter and how like Maggie kind of attributed it to like a John Waters like picture where it was just kind of it has that more kind of how would you say Maggie kind of like
Like
I don't want to say grunge but
like almost kind
controversial.
of like strange satire in a way. I'm like I think we
That's what
just
it was,
couldn't
I
figure
think.
out what to sort of make of it. I think as an
Of the
American audience, I
Yeah.
feel like maybe an English audience it sort of reads differently for us, but we were very curious about that one and sort of the perception of it if you remember anything about when it came out just because the subject matter is sort of quite out there for
Yeah.
I guess
When was it?
standard television.
90, 89, 90?
Something like that,
Was that
yeah.
when it was? I think, man, well, probably the first thing to say is, it came out in the same era as Twin Peaks was still playing on the television.
Oh,
And I only mention that
Yeah.
fair.
because that element, that David Lynch element of,
Hmm.
what are we looking at? Ostensibly, what I'm seeing here is this, but hang on a minute. Why am I feeling where's that trepidation coming from? Where's that sort of that weird feeling coming from? What's that sort of numinous quality? Why am I scared suddenly when what I'm looking
Yeah.
at is ostensibly one thing? So I think it was probably trying for some again being in that era. Nice Town was probably the way it was shot and the way it was framed and acted was probably trying for that. The idea that you had and of course the title is satirical, Nice Town. It's anything but.
Yeah. That's anything
Um,
but yeah.
Exactly. And so probably you may have had again. I've never seen it. Um, I don't watch things I'm in, but I remember
Yeah.
I remember when we made it, and I remember when it came out, and people really liked it.
Mm.
And I think what critics liked it, people enjoyed it. I think it was repeated, which was always a good sign that
Yeah.
people did like it. But really, that I think John Waters again is a good call. So it's quite a trick to pull off. That it's quite tricky. You've got to know what you're doing. It was well written. Who was the Guy Hibbert? Wasn't it? Guy Hibbert's a really clever writer. At writing these slightly, it's just things with sort of faint echoes of menace in it,
Yeah. That's
which is a
exactly what it
nice trick.
was.
Yeah, it's a nice trick to pull off. Of course, for the actors and for us, we can't play menacing because that wouldn't work. We need to, rather like they did in Twin Peaks, you play the sweetness, you play the whatever, whatever, and the menace takes care of itself. I enjoyed it. It was odd.
It
Um,
was very
and
odd.
some of yeah,
Oh,
and some of the images were even for the day were quite
Hmm.
um, you know. I remember being in a bathroom. Wasn't there a scene in that? Yeah,
hmm
you
Hmm.
know,
hmm
yeah,
hmm
so
There's
some
a
of it
few
was
in
quite,
there.
some of it was quite edgy, and this, of course, was
Yeah.
designed. This was going to be Sunday night
Hmm.
drama in
Mm,
Britain. This was like
okay.
mainstream, you know, and of course there was nothing pornographic in it, but nothing that would have meant it wouldn't have made Sunday night. But uh, I liked it. More of that. I remember thinking at the time, oh God, I'd like to do more of this kind of thing. It was proper. It was theatrical in the clever, in the best sense. A kind of weird morality tale. Uh, and then, of course, I remember, and there was prosthetics, weren't there? I
Yeah, I was
remember.
about to ask.
Oh
Yeah.
God, now I'm remembering. Now I'm remembering. Um,
You're welcome.
somewhere in this house. Yeah, thanks for that. Somewhere. If I start to cry in a minute, it's all your fault. Somewhere in this
It's okay.
house, there
I'll put
is
it on my
there's a
resume.
there's a plaster. In fact, you know what I'm going to do, Maggie? Later I'll send you a picture of it
Oh.
when I find it. Is it's a plaster cast of my torso.
Oh,
Because they
wow.
had to cast my torso in order to make these prosthetic breasts, because there was a scene where it was like a
Yeah.
dream sequence where the character I played, he's breastfeeding a child, he's suckling a child, and a child in it. So they had to model me for this thing, and in the end they said, "Well, we can't use it. Do you want to take it?" So I threw it in the car, and it's somewhere in the house. Yeah. Anyway,
It's
um,
Is that
so
thing? Do you have quite a lot of just sort of random things that you've picked up from stuff you've
very
done over the
random.
things?
Yeah, yeah, little random bits. Particularly if it's to
That's
do with
funny.
that, well, what's they
Yeah.
say, we'll just throw it away. I said, no, give it to me. I'll take it back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
and sometimes, and years later, you open a drawer and it's like, you go, what on earth is that? What is that? You can't remember what it's for.
it's fine. It's my junk drawer. Don't worry about it. Um,
But that was nice. That was a good one. That's one of the
yeah.
ones, if I perhaps even, I was saying, if I had to run into a building and save 10 things I've been in, that might be one of them because it was good.
Yeah.
Oh.
And successful. And even now, I think, it would probably still work.
Hmm.
Um, because sometimes, with TV's great. We know, because television is just, you make masterpiece television, you can. It's a fantastic way of storytelling. And that was really good TV. What was it? I don't know. You probably know more than I do. What was it? Two parts or three parts? I can't remember.
It was
Um,
Was it?
three,
It
right? It
was
was the
three,
Three,
yeah.
right.
three.
Well, maybe just three
Yeah.
1 hours or TV hours. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, really good, really good.
I
Um,
think that's kind of what Meg and I both really love about British television as opposed to American television is because you got it's very succinct and it's well written and it has more depth to it, whereas I feel like we kind of try to extend it as much as possible. And that's what I'm always drawn to. I like kind of the shorter seasons because I feel like you can pack more in it and it's more impactful as opposed to like the
mm.
longer
Well, that's interesting.
seasons.
Would you be surprised to hear that we tend to think the opposite?
That's
Really?
funny.
Where American TV is concerned, it's a general point, but here people tend to think, well, why can't we just be more professional like they are in the US? They get gang of people working on something and really getting the most out of it. They have writers groups and they have proper. It never flies by the seat of its pants. It's always properly. By the time you see it, it works. That's how we
And I think
regard.
that's better.
Obviously, obviously the crap is made too in the US, like crap is made everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the
Oh,
good stuff that we get, the good stuff we see, is almost peerless.
yeah.
It's proper. But only in the way that you need to, have the resources, spend the money on it, and prepare it properly. Um, the Brits can make decent TV, I think,
I
and
think so.
occasionally
I
do.
think so too. Yeah, I think so too.
I think, and
Yeah,
again,
I just
it's a broader point, and maybe it's not even a
yeah.
rabbit hole we want to go down. But I think if the Brits, I've always thought this throughout my working life, that if, particularly where telly's concerned, if that the Brits could probably now and again stop trying to copy the Americans because there aren't the resources. You're never going to be able to do that. And more pointedly, perhaps favor. Am I really going to use the word indigenous? Oh, maybe there's a better word
Yeah,
for it, but
your
stories,
roots. Yeah.
themes. We don't have
Hmm.
to pretend to be Americans or do that sort of equivalent thing. All our pop stars sang in cod American accents. There's no need to do that. It actually works when you just, you tell your own tales and you sort of, you back them up and stick by them. It's fine. It works. It's going to work.
And I
Um,
think the same can be said for Americans too. I mean, I can't tell you how many times we've tried to adapt British television. I mean, they did it for Broadchurch. They've done it for the Ghosts, that they've done
yeah.
that comedy series Ghosts. And then I like a long time ago, Maggie and I are both huge fans of Life on Mars and Ashes to Ashes, and they tried an American version of Life on Mars, and it was just like, leave it alone. It's five
Why would that
artists.
not work? I
Like
never so, but why would it not work? It's such a good idea. I
it's
mean,
an
it's like a
amazing idea.
really good idea. It's like sliding doors.
I
It's like a
yeah.
simple, it's a childishly good
Hmm.
idea. It's brilliant. It's a perfectly good idea. Why would it not work?
I just think that I don't think I don't know, maybe some of the themes within like just British pop procedurals don't really apply to American procedurals. I feel like
Okay, I
it just
understand
didn't
that.
feel like and I feel like perhaps like if we stop, I think we try too hard to make it exactly like I mean I think I saw like the trailer for the adaptation for Broadchurch which Tennant was in and he played an
Mm,
American but it felt exactly like parallel and it's like to your point if you're going to do it stick to the roots of like what an American audience would understand. And I think they try, but again, I think it comes down to like budget and what
Hmm.
is
yeah.
possible and who they're able to bring in. I mean, at the same time, too, I'm super biased. I loved Philip Glenister as Gene Hunt, and I cannot see anybody but Philip Glenister in that role. And I don't think that could be applied to an American, like, I don't ever see an American like police detective be like what we saw, as Gene Hunt with that northern bluster.
Yeah.
But then like I think they put Harvey Keitel as
No
that role. And I
way.
just
Interesting.
Harvey's
No
great, but it's just
way.
not what it
Great,
is.
great
Yeah.
actor, but not Gene
Yeah.
Hunt.
Amazing actor. Yeah, not Gene Hunt. He's one of my favorite written characters I've ever
Yeah.
seen. Like I love him. Him and Malcolm Tucker, which I'm
Yeah,
so thankful
I
that we
think
have not tried to we've not tried to do anything like
no,
that.
don't go near that one.
Oh yeah.
You can't
Leave
touch
well
that one.
alone. Leave well
Yeah.
alone. Yeah, but Gene
Yeah.
Hunt was
No.
great, wasn't he? I mean, that kind of dinosaur,
Hmm.
Hmm.
um, you know, um, sexist, awful, you know, smelly character. Almost like I
But
won't say
then,
like a Falstaff, but there's
Hmm.
but there's something very resonant for Brits about that.
hmm
Anyway, but I mean, again, part of that lovely idea, that you could sort of, you went through some portal and you were magic back to this time. And Gene Hunt, of course, was also redeemable.
Yes.
You knew there was a sweet, you so wanted them to get together, and there was a kind of, you
Yeah.
knew there was a kind of sweet side, and you knew that,
Yeah.
again, it's that lovely thing of knowing, watching a play or a film, and you know more than the characters. You know what's coming.
Yeah.
They don't know this.
Hmm.
They don't know that the wind's about to change and everything's going to be
Yeah.
different. And there's that lovely feeling, as an audience of watching that. Yeah. And Phil was brilliant.
I love that you worked with him. Again, like he's one of my favorite actors as well. So like having like seeing you guys in Hornblower together, I was like, oh, this is perfect. It's all my favorite people. Like it was really cool to see you guys be in that.
I
But
wish you could be present. Yeah,
yeah,
when like I don't know, when the day that I like Hombo was a good example. Turn up on a set and there's Phil. Um,
yeah.
and maybe actors do it the same everywhere, but you really want to say to them, "I think you're great," because you're a
Yeah.
fan. Everyone's fan. Everyone's fans of someone. How much
Yeah.
fans of other actors, but you never do. You never. Well, you might just say it at the end, the rap party, or you might sort of pick your
Mm.
moment. When really what you want to do is go, "Oh my God, I'm so glad I'm here, and you're here. I think you're great." Really, that's what you should be saying. Um, or maybe it's just because we're Brits, but you can see people kind of sometimes straining. They want to say it, but they don't.
Yeah.
I wish you could see us
It's
sometimes. The effort it
it's sweet.
takes not to just blurt it out.
Well, because you want to play it cool too. You don't
You
want to
want to
look
be
like an
cool.
absolute, yeah, you don't want to be, the
Yeah.
nerd that's like, oh my God, I love your work. But even though it's like, it's the highest compliment that you could pay somebody. Like anyone loves to hear that. Like regardless of what walk of life you come from, it's always nice to hear that positive feedback.
Yeah, but Katie, there's time and a place for it. I think,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's
It's true.
not like on
It's
the
true.
first day.
Oh,
Yeah.
for sure. No, no, no.
Yeah.
No, no,
I've
no, no.
tried it, believe me. I've tried it. I've blurted it out. Yeah. And
You
it's
live
just
and you learn. That's
you live and you learn.
the
There's
only way to
this
do it.
eerie silence for a couple of days, and it's all your fault.
Like, you're like, okay, sorry. But kind of going back to what you were saying about kind of wishing that England wouldn't try to do so much of like trying to copy and emulate what American audiences, well, not American film does. Um, so there was, with all the research that we've done, we've noticed a trend in your characters, which is something that we absolutely adore. But what we really were pleasantly surprised with, was to see you take on a role that's kind of considered a little bit more action heavy, in Downtime. And I know that it's
Oh
not one of
wow.
your favorites, but it's Maggie and I's one of our favorites, and it's actually the first episode of this podcast. And I know that a lot of people kind of bring up the doctor and with Nil when they talk to you about like your work, but how do you kind of navigate when fans kind of bring up parts of your work that doesn't actually feel kind of accurately describes like the standard of your work? You know, how do you kind of navigate it? Do you just kind of
Well, there's a question. I don't. Well, let's take Downtime, for example. Again, I've never
yeah.
seen it.
Hmm.
Again, most actors you talk to aren't going to watch the things that they're in, unless there's a reason to watch it. Um,
Yeah.
so I've never seen it since we did it. So I can only remember being there and
Yeah.
doing it. I don't think it did anything. It came and went. So I couldn't even tell you what year it was. I do. I do remember thinking when we were making it that no one will ever see this. I remember thinking that for some reason. I know I'm glad to hear that someone has. No, but then maybe
Yeah.
I should ask you, what is it about that that you like? And then
So
maybe you can tell me. Then maybe it will help me remember. What is it about Downtime?
I think what is funny to us is it's posited as this like dramatic thriller, action thriller, I think, but Maggie and I kind of more consider it like a romantic comedy.
I
You
don't know
know
if that's the
what?
way I
We've
would
always,
phrase it, but like there is that
oh,
bent to it for sure.
yeah, I mean, it
But you're
definitely has a
right,
thriller
though. You're
element to
right. You're
it.
right. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
Like there's this
It's
element
a
with like your
rom-com.
character and Chrissy. And like I love that Chrissy kind of just spends the majority of the film kind of like cussing you out. It's kind of funny. Like it just was like, and she's kind of mean to you, and like your character is kind of like so enamored, and it was really really sweet to kind of see that you're like, stop being so mean to me, but you still kind of kept coming back and trying your heart. Like I'm saying, it's like you, it's like it's you personally, but you know what I mean. But I think that's kind of what got me the most. I think it was just really sweet, that kind of dynamic in the
Mhm.
midst of like what is considered a super like catastrophic event, like being stuck in an elevator. Like that is, I've said to Maggie, and I've said it on the episode when we recorded it, that being stuck in an elevator and knowing no one knowing that I'm stuck in the elevator is like my worst nightmare. So like
Yeah,
that was
terrifying.
just that it's horrible. It's horrible. But yeah, I
Remind
think
me what
like as a
happens in it.
whole,
So there's an elevator.
yeah.
Oh God, I'm remembering in real time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these are they the only two people stuck in the lift?
It's them and
Or
her
It's
son and an older gentleman. Yeah.
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I
And like
remember
I guess like there's a
Stephen Graham was in it. I remember
Yeah,
meeting
yeah.
a young
Mhm.
Stephen Graham. He's
Hmm.
probably only a teenager when we shot it. He was there.
Yeah, and
I
he
remember
was
that.
yeah,
I
he
can
was like the
remember
gang leader.
Susan Lynch being tied
Hmm.
to the outside to the we were on the top floor of this building and
Hmm.
20 odd stories up on this building. I have to tell you here as well that you may have known this. I have no head for heights whatsoever,
Oh,
and none
Same.
at all. Yeah,
No,
on the top, if I
it's
climb a
horrible.
ladder, I just start to wig out.
Hmm. Couldn't
So
do it.
when we shot
Hmm.
those sequences, me, Mr. Tough Guy, whatever the character's name was, he has to go and talk this woman down. They really struggled to get me anywhere near Susan Lynch. I wouldn't even go to the. And Susan's looking at me, going, "Paul, I've been out here now for 45 minutes. It's January. This is
Hurry
we shot
up.
in Liverpool. It's freezing. Will you just come in quickly? Can we just come in?" And I'm going, "No, no, no, I can't." The nearer I got to her, I just felt like fainting. That's how tough guy I was. We had hysterics. That's all I remember from it. I can just remember being really uncomfortable,
I mean,
laughing, laughing with Susan Lynch because she's hysterically
She's
funny.
amazing.
yeah.
But
I mean, I think
you
that
know
sort of
what? But now you
discomfort
mentioned
reads in the character as well. I think that's part of the
no, that's
appeal
real.
for me.
That
Yeah.
that fear in my eyes is real. I tell you, I was terrified. I was terrified. Remember too, there was this guy. Oh God, what's his name? Now I'm gonna forget his name. It's all so long ago. The stunt coordinator was ex-military,
Mm.
British, and very. I mean, this guy anyway. He was if he was American, he'd be like a Navy SEAL. He was ex-special forces. No, he was working in the film game. And Susan was going to have to, well, like you see in the film, I'm sure, she's going to throw herself off this this balcony. So he's got this. So now she's got these hidden. She's wearing this little harness, and it's this stunt guy who has to demonstrate first for Susan, and then help her into this harness, and she's going to climb out over the railing on this top of it. And I remember I was there, although I wouldn't get within 10 feet of them, through fear. And I don't know, it was a tiny moment, but she asked him a question and he looked her in the eye and it was the way that he said, "Trust me." I've never forgotten it. It got
Mm.
like in a voice you wouldn't question. There was
Hmm.
Yeah.
something anyway, now I'm just remembering it's a tiny thing. And she just half smiled and then got into the thing and just climbed over 20 stories up, climbed over the side onto this thing. Um, he's
That
more courageous
ex-military
than I was.
energy.
I would never have done it. I would just, he'd
Yeah.
never have, I wouldn't have trusted him. Anyway, Downtime. There you go.
Yeah.
I don't know that I ever felt, like the action hero. Anyway, action heroes, it was never really me. I'm not a big guy and I'm
Yeah.
not, they tend to, you need to be like a strapping lad, Paul Mescal or whatever.
Yeah.
That's an action hero. They're born, not made, these people. I always felt really awkward and probably still would. Not that it's ever going to happen again, but um, even doing some of the sort of army things and like the military roles. When really I shouldn't have worried. There's like short-ass soldiers and tough guy. You know what I mean? And I could play them, but I never ever felt it was always a. I always had to convince myself. It's that was most of the work. Anytime I was
Mhm.
cast as a kind of in an action role, I always had to talk myself into it. It never felt natural. Funny, isn't it? And really, what actors think of themselves kind of matters
Yeah.
only in the sense that you want to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I played a lot of soldier characters. I think that was the one and
Yeah.
only time I was ever, like a first responder or something.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Um, Although I have played, I don't know if I played Special Forces soldier, and so depending on the material, and subtle use of lighting and camera, sometimes it's worked.
Hmm.
You know, must be great to be. What's his name? I don't know. Must be great to just be Chris Hemsworth. Is that the guy's name? These kind of characters must be
Thor.
just great. Just to sort of turn up. It doesn't really matter what you
Yeah.
say. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter if you say anything. Just
Yeah.
put him in the kit. Just shoo him out, and we're good to go, kind of thing. That must be great. But it ain't me.
I think it's more interesting. I think those kind of characters, like going back to Chris Hemsworth, that's no knock to him, but like I think there's more depth to characters like that, for instance, like you play that I think Chris unfortunately doesn't get because he gets so typecasted as like, the
Hmm.
strong man and the action hero and the Marvel character or whatever. And I sometimes I think there's more I enjoy more of the depth rather than it just being kind of filler, I guess.
Well, so do
I
I. I
think,
mean, yeah, yeah. I think
yeah,
I think we all do, but
yeah,
it still takes all sorts. You need Chris
yeah,
Hemsworth, and
yeah,
you know,
Yeah, it's an
Michael Sheen,
ecosystem.
and yeah, come on, you need David
exactly.
Tennant and McCoy and me. You need everybody. It's a
The boy band.
it's a boy band. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we feel like that sometimes. Me
Yeah.
and McCoy and Colin and Peter. When
Hmm.
we were on tour somewhere, it does feel
Funny.
like some sort of superannuated boy band.
Um, I think I'm gonna bring back a little bit. We've kind of touched upon like legacy and the work and being an actor and stuff like that. We know that you're a huge historian, a huge history buff, as evidenced by the podcast that you host and stuff like that. And correct me if I'm wrong, and I could have dreamt this up, but I felt like I read somewhere that there was you would go to these like I guess battlefields or whatever, like World War I, World War II battlefields, and potentially I think photograph them in the same angle that like like actual
Mm.
pictures from the day were.
Yeah,
Did I dream that up
here.
or
No, that's you probably you're. It's about right. Um,
yeah,
there was a time, not so much these days, but certainly during the 80s and 90s when it's a short hop from here, from the south of England across the Channel, to France,
mhm,
Belgium. You got those old Western Front battlefields.
yeah,
First World War, Second World War. In fact, every war for 1,000 years basically is rolled backwards and forwards across that, Northern Europe. And a friend, along with a friend of mine, Barry Bliss, not a great name. Me
that's
and
a
my mate
great name.
Barry, we would we'd spend days and weeks, going to places, looking at, for example, just the Somme battlefield. These
Yeah,
battles. I mean, we might sometimes rightly think a battle was fought in just a couple of fields or a big farm, like Waterloo was.
yeah,
But some battlefields, some of those Western Front battlefields are 25 miles wide and,
it's
10
insane.
miles deep. They're huge. So there's a lot to see. You can just keep going back. And that's what we used to do. We shot a couple of films there, just for ourselves. A lot of these places, but forgive me if but after World War One, 100 years ago, the Brits set up something called the War Graves Commission. It was the first time in history that the fallen in large battles were interred where they fell.
Mhm.
So Brits or Allied soldiers, say, that were killed at the Somme are now buried there.
Mhm.
What's more, they're depending on what day they were killed, in what action they may have died in. Um, it might just be a small place, in a sort of copse down a lane over there. There might be 10 bodies in the, or on the big, but
Wow.
on certain days it was thousands. So you get these different grave sites, and they're managed in perpetuity by this British Association, that kind of thing. The Americans have got
Yeah.
similar now, all over the world. But really, 100 years ago, it was the first time that anyone had thought to do it. So, even those places themselves have a historical meaning and historical context. Similarly, with the unknown soldier, these ideas were coined and patented then. Um, and these places, like I say, if you're here, you can it's just a train ride, away you go, and you cross the channel, so you're in your car, go under the tunnel, you come out of Boulogne. From there, it's about an hour down to Picardy, down to the Somme. But even in that hour, you're going through battlefields, famous battlefields from different centuries. There's Field of
Wow.
Cloth of Gold, where Henry VIII was. There's Battle of Cressy. You're already driving through it. There's different Battle of the Atlantic. You've got Second World War sites, and then you know every 10 minutes it's a different place. And then so
Yeah.
we did that, and we were fascinated by it. Also, it's worth pointing out that I'm exactly, and similarly my mate Barry, I was born at a time, me and my siblings, when the chances were that your dad was in the war, and your uncles, and what's more, your grandparents were in the first one. I
Mhm.
was born in the late 50s, so my dad took part in the Normandy landings, and both my
Yeah.
grandparents were in World War One. So anyway, the point being that it's in your house, it's in your family, it's
Mhm.
in your school, the teacher in school, the fella in the shop, the guy who helps you cross the road when you're a child, whoever. All the grown-ups were in the war. So you sort of grow up in the aftermath of it. So, and we did. Um, so there's a kind of personal. There really is. It always has been a personal aspect to it. Anyway, um, and I always loved it. Really worth seeing. I mean, have you ever? I've got American friends who only now have discovered it. And they're coming over and they're looking across these different places in Northern Europe.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
maybe,
my brother's in Europe right now, and he just sent us pictures the other day from Bastogne, which I was
yes,
not at all sort of familiar
yeah,
with. And they went and sort of wandered around there, and it is even the pictures. It's it there's a sense you get that you don't get from like visiting other sorts of
mm.
places, and it's hard to describe what that feeling is.
I have to say though, like, for the first time last year, I went to DC for the first time, and I'd never been. And we looked around the similar sites there. Arlington. You get the same feeling.
Mhm.
And it's why am I saying that? But you know, it's 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 important.
Mhm.
And it's important that these places are there, and it's important that they're maintained. That it's important that you visit them, because you might learn something.
Hmm.
Yeah.
No, I always enjoyed. Also, as a kid, or rather as a young actor, I suppose because my first break, so to speak, was a First World War drama, a
Hmm.
TV drama here, Monocled Mutineer.
Uh-huh.
And even had I not gone and done the thing with my mate Barry, I'd still, people even now, I know, because people even now, years and years later, still associate me with that, or they talk about that, or they remember to me having seen it. Um, and in a way, that's sort of, like I say, that we did that in '85. So, and that was at a period where in the '80s, a lot of the First World War vets were still around, lots of them. Um, But of course, there'd been that 60 years of that sort of omerta. No one spoke of it. Um, they would in the next 15, 20 years, as those men became, the combatants became, got older, got into their 90s, suddenly were over 100. They became very famous, um, um, which is exactly the period that me and my mate were going across the battlefields. In the end, in fact, it was, we went, me and Barry, my mate Barry, we were at, so it would be 96, and we were at the 80th anniversary of
Mm.
the Somme. There
Wow.
was a big commemoration that year. Like, the 80th for the Normandy landings just took place, recently. In fact, it's
Mhm.
the last one where conceivably any combatants are going to still be around. There's only a handful of,
Yeah.
so that's the last one. It's always the last one. And we were there at the one for the Somme, and they were, in the middle of the line at the Somme. Tell you, like I say, it's 20, 30 miles wide. And in the middle, there's this huge Lutyens monument to the missing. And that's where this ceremony took place. And there was the Cardinal of France, and there was the King of so and so, and these dignitaries are there. And me and my friend are sort of on the edge of this crowd. And there were some old boys there who'd been in the war, very
Oh
old
wow.
now, in
Yeah.
wheelchairs. And one of them, once this ceremony had stopped and we were sort of milling around with the hundreds of people, and we were trying to listen in. One of these old boys was being interviewed. There was an Australian telly crew there, and they were talking to him. And while he was talking to this crew, and we're sort of straining to listen, he caught my eye, this guy, and he stopped. And he said to me, he said, "Are you that lad from that Monocle Mutiny?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Come here." So I sort of pushed my way through the crowd, and I knelt down next to him. And and now we're both being filmed for whatever, Australian television, whatever. And he said to me, "What was the name of that song that you sang in that?" And this is like 10 years after we'd made the thing. And
Wow.
I said, "Oh God." I said, to my shame, I remembered the tune, not the words. He said, "Don't worry." He said, "I know the words." And somewhere, I'd love to think somewhere on someone, ABC Sydney or whatever, I've got this footage of me and who would it have been? Mike Lally, maybe, um, singing "Let the Great Big World Keep Turning." And
That's
anyway,
beautiful.
that's what I mean. So that was like this connection. And then he said to me,
Mhm.
he said, "We're having a do, we're having a party, He said, I said, "Where?" He said, "See that tent up there?" There was like 5 or 6 of these, and there were 8, in fact, of these old boys. He said, "Come to the do." I said, "Well, I'm in me, just in this walking gear, like I'm covered in mud, looking scruffy." And I said, "I got me mate with me." He said, "You're with me." And we went up to this marquee, and there was this sort of tough guy who told me to hop it. He said, "Go on, clear off." I said, "No, I'm with the." Anyway, we got into this too. And he said to these other old boys, he said, "Boys, look," he said, "it's that lad off the Monocle Mutiny." And anyway, long story short, I fell in effect, with these old fellas and the association that they were part of. And years after would even share a stage with Harry Patch. Harry lived to 108, and we would do festival gigs together, and so it became a thing. Bill, what's his name? Henry Allingham was one of them. He was the oldest man in the world when he died. 116, I thought 15, I think he was. Anyway,
Oh my
so it
gosh.
was something. It was really something. But it felt
Mhm.
like, and it was all through that time when they were both. I know, because we used to spend hours talking about it. They were sort of kind of half mystified as to why anybody wanted to talk about it after having spent all of their adult lives keeping stum, And now, for some reason, everybody. It was. Remember Harry once, and he was over 100 at this point. We were in some room, and there's Prince Charles or whatever. We had some thing, And he's going, First World War. He's going, well, he said, I'm sick of it. He said, it's all anyone ever wants to talk about, kind of thing. And I said, well, what do you want to talk about? And he said to me, the euro. What? He said, the euro. There was arguments going on as whether Britain should join the euro exchange, blah, blah, blah. And anyway, the point being that if there was one thing that all of these really old fellas, and they've lived in 3 centuries, these men, it was the one thing that they all shared, they all had one identifiable quality. They all had it was that. It was that curiosity. What's happening? What's going on tomorrow? What's that round the corner? That's it. That's how you stay alive. That's how you stay, that's how you keep going. That's it. That was it. And people were forever saying, we'd be in the room, we'd be meeting members of the public, and people would say, "What's your secret? Is it something, like it's something you eat or some substance you take or something?" People are always asking these questions. And these old boys are going, well, I don't know. Remember Harry saying to one woman, I've been shot, I've been gassed, I've fought in 2 wars. They've all fought in both wars. He said, I've smoked unfiltered cigarettes for about 75 years. I always liked to drink. What can I tell you? You know what I mean? It was just like, there's no secret except you stay curious. Fantastic people.
Yeah.
Bless their memory.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was my connection with it. That was a long-winded answer. But it just felt like something, my grandfather, AB, was underage. I think he was 16, and he took his brother's papers. This is in the First World War, and joined up. And within weeks was in the biggest sea battle in history, Jutland. Like I said, my old man was 19, just turned 20, and he was in the first wave on Gold Beach on the 6th of June, 1944. Yeah. So it's kind of there's a familial there's a family that millions of us we feel that. Yeah.
Well, that's the end of the first half of our conversation with Paul McGann, because I don't think either of us have processed yet that we had a 3-hour conversation with Paul McGann. So I stay tuned for the next part, I guess. That's so very weird to say that we are splitting. We have two episodes with Paul McGann coming out. That's a wild thing. Wild shit, you guys.
It's a very weird sentence to say, but yes, we have an interview with Paul McGann. So see you next week.